Right, it's time now for Focus. And today, on International Women's Day, we have a special report on a Saudi woman fighting for gender equality. Her name is Nadine Bdeir, and she hosts a liberal TV show in the United Arab Emirates. She moved there because of her home country's infamous restrictions on women. France 24's Miyuki Droz Aramaki went to meet her.
In Abu Dhabi, the capital of the United Arab Emirates, like every Saturday, the hairdresser finalizes the look of this Saudi journalist. In a couple of minutes, Nadine Bdeir will go live. In her home country, women have to wear the abaya, a long black cloak that covers the whole body. Nadine decided to move to neighboring UAE to have more freedom. Her choice to wear a skirt is more about politics than fashion.
There's a clear discrimination. Men are allowed to wear what they want, while women are forced to wear the veil. In Saudi Arabia, the veil is used to restrict women's movements. They use it as an excuse to say, you're wearing a veil, so where do you think you're going? If God had wanted me to wear the veil, I would have been born in one.
Nadine has faced multiple threats, but this Saudi feminist activist keeps on shattering taboos.
Welcome everyone to the Etijahat show.
Her weapon is her show. Broadcast in Saudi Arabia, it features experts from across the Middle East, men and women alike. Today, she is hosting a former Hezbollah fighter turned human rights activist.
I think our society today needs a big electric shock, and especially my society. To me, that electric shock has to come from the media.
2 years ago, one of her interviews created a buzz worldwide. On her show, a Saudi historian was defending the driving ban for women.
If a woman drives and her car breaks down, what will happen to her?
But women drive whether it's in the US or in the rest of the Arab world.
These women don't care about being raped on the roadside.
And there's no chance Saudi drivers might rape them?
Of course there is. So my solution is to bring in foreign female drivers to drive our women.
The TV anchor bursts out laughing. We meet her again on the way to the mixing studio. Today, she mostly uses taxis, but it is by choice. The journalist advocates for women's rights to drive in her country. For her, there is just no other option.
Men always have all the rights. To me, men and women are equally entitled to 100% of their rights. Many Saudi pundits launch debates on women's right to drive, but I stopped attending them. I'm tired of it. They ask you for scientific studies proving that women should be driving. They discuss the socio-economic impact it would have. To me, this is all rubbish. I want to drive because it's my right to, that's it.
Her debate show is often prized, but it is also violently criticized by fundamentalists from across the region. They blame the journalist for defending a Western vision of women and society. She denies these claims. On the contrary, for her, these very clerics are the ones who have brainwashed the Arab youth over the past decades.
People from past generations say that before radicals took over, life was easier in Saudi Arabia, that our society was a lot more open-minded. There were even cinemas back then. But the Muslim Brotherhood brought misogyny into my country. The Salafi movement integrated it, and today the impact on women is terrible. It's given birth to a new generation that wants to annihilate women and negates her right to exist. This generation wants to control her in every aspect of her life, and they cross every possible boundary.
In Saudi Arabia, women are second-class citizens for life. They are subservient to a male guardian and need his authorization to travel abroad, to study, or work. Last December, Saudi women voted for the very first time in the municipal elections. This is a symbolic victory for Nadine and a handful of fellow activists, who will keep on fighting one of the most restrictive systems in the world.
I'm joined now in the studio by Philippe Lovett from CARE France. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Hello.
Now, are there many women in the Middle East like Nadine fighting for gender equality?
Well, there are a few, so I'm glad you showcased her today and you put her on the spot. I think it's absolutely necessary that we support women who are taking up that fight for their rights. So I greatly admire her and what she's doing. But unfortunately, she cannot do it in her own country. Isn't it amazing that she has to go to the Emirates to be able to talk to
The show is broadcast in her country, but she
It
can't.
is.
She wouldn't be able to get away with such comments if she were to record back home. Now, apart from Saudi Arabia, could you give us an overview of the situation, if possible, in just a few words? The situation for women in the Middle East. Does it vary very much from country to country?
Well, it does vary very much in the Middle East or in the Arab world altogether. It is certainly true that in Saudi Arabia there are big issues as we've just seen, but there are other countries like Yemen and Syria where the situation is horrible for women because of the conflict. In other settings like Jordan or Egypt, there is more freedom, obviously, or even the Emirates. But over the course of the past years, we've seen the question of women's rights going backwards, especially in Egypt, but as well in Jordan, even in Morocco. So it's a fight that we have to fight every day.
You mentioned Egypt. In what way have women's rights regressed?
Well, over the course of the past few years, I mean, we did a survey 2 years ago on the impact of Arab Springs on women's rights in the occupied Palestinian territories, in Egypt, in Jordan, in Morocco. And everywhere we found that rights
and also represent their country at the Olympic Games
went backwards
and become
for
lawyers
the past years. In these countries. Maybe because there is a generation gap between younger women today who thought, especially in Egypt or in Tunisia, in Morocco, that their rights were granted. They took it for granted. And then, religious conservationism, political tensions made it so that things lapsed and they lost ground in their fights. Older women older feminist women are not in a situation to engage in positive and constructive dialogues with younger generations. They're not on Facebook, they do not work through social media, so there's this gap. And this gap has led to this situation today where the younger generation didn't consider that the question of rights was still on the agenda, but it is.
And that can be seen even here in France, where obviously the situation doesn't compare at all to Syria or Yemen, but women still do have some way to go before there's complete gender equality in terms of pay, for example.
Yes.
And recently we saw with the latest cabinet reshuffle, the creation of a ministry for women, women's rights, family and children.
But in the other order.
Yes.
Ministry
family,
for family,
children and women's rights. That's the right order.
And that tells a lot.
Women's rights last, but also to be associated with family and children in a way, well, some people have said that that's sexist. How far do you think France still has to go?
It still has to go, and I think that's the name of this ministry will change. President Hollande said he will change the name or the order of the ministry, because that's a big mistake, obviously, especially today, everybody's up on this question of the name of the ministry. But things have changed, still need to change, not only here in France, but in Europe at large, and obviously the United States as well, or in India or in Africa. So it's a battle that has to be fought every day, not only today, every day.
Are there any countries that can be held up as models when it comes to gender equality? Sweden, perhaps?
Well, the World Economic Forum produces a report every 2 years and ranks the countries according to several indicators. And Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Finland, Denmark always come first, the top 5, all of the northern countries. So maybe we have to look up north and see where they are doing better.
And just a word on men. Isn't it important that men be part of this fight for gender equality?
Well, it's just as important. So one cannot oppose men and women, obviously. We are in it together. And CARE in the Balkans, CARE Balkans has started a program engaging young men of school age on this kind of issues. And now it's incorporated into the educational system in Croatia and in Serbia, a country where young men were grown up during the war, have seen only scenes of violence all the time, where gender violence is granted. So it's very important to change this kind of behaviors. And the
Absolutely.
media have such an important role to play.
We do indeed.
So here you are.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Philippe Lovett from Care France, for coming in
Thank
today.
you.
And thank you for watching. We're going to go to a quick break. I'll be back in a couple of minutes.